This week's Inside EVs podcast is brought to you by Electrify America, and we're so happy to be partnering with Electrify America until the end of the year. With Electrify America, you can drive your EV from coast to coast with more than 650 charging stations nationwide and new locations opening every week. Electrify America is bringing EV drivers the freedom they need. Whether you want to plan a weekend getaway, maybe you're off to see some friends or relatives, maybe it's a coast-to-coast road trip. You can ask our Kyle about how that's done using Electrify America charging stations. Well, you can rely on Electrify America's ultra-fast chargers to get you back on the road faster. So, where will you go charging on Electrify America? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear what your plans are for this weekend, and tell us where you'll go next. And you can learn more at electrifyamerica.com.
Hello, and welcome to the Inside EVs podcast for September the 10th, 2021. This is episode number 75. Our headlines this week: Mini Mercedes EQ debut in Munich. VW ID Life concept introduces us to the short MED platform. And Renault Megane E-Tech Electric makes its entrance, and much, much more. I'm Dominic Yoni, Inside EV's forum moderator and Inside EV's editor. Joining us today via Time Machine is the world-renowned Tom Moloughney, Inside EV's editor and host of the YouTube channel State of Charge. We also have the miraculous Mr. Martin Lee from the EV News Daily podcast, which, of course, is available on all the best podcast platforms. And of course, Kyle Connor joins us from Out of Spec Studios. He also puts together virtuosic videos for the Inside EV's YouTube channel. All right, before we get going, I'd like to ask that you please subscribe to the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that thumbs up button. Of course, you can ring the bell icon on Twitch or YouTube and be informed about any new videos that pop up on our channel. All right, so with that out of the way, welcome everybody. So this week, let's start by talking about what we've been driving this week, starting with Tom. Now, he's over in Europe driving the BMW iX and i4 right now, but he can't tell us about those yet. So to find out what cars he can tell us about, let's travel back in time a couple days when we managed to record this next segment. If you have any questions, we'll be here. Just type them in the YouTube or Twitch live comment feed, and we'll do our best to answer. And then we'll be back to the present with Kyle to talk about his electric Euro ventures. All right? Okay, let's go. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Hey, guys, what's up?
All right. So you're in Germany right now at a nice hotel. Nice gold walls.
Here in Munich for the IAA. For the first time, it's being held here in Munich. It's usually held in Frankfurt. And they switched things up this year, and BMW invited me out here to do a first drive of the iX and i4. Unfortunately, those are going to be tomorrow and the next day, so I haven't driven them yet. And unfortunately, even more is the driving impressions are embargoed until October. So even if I had driven them already, I couldn't talk about it just yet. But we will be talking about those a few weeks on the podcast. But I have seen some other cool things here this week that we could talk about.
Right, and we do actually have seen the the iX actually at the show, and you have maybe a picture that you can show us and talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that I found interesting, and I had known ahead of time that you weren't that the hood on the iX wasn't readily accessible. You weren't, you weren't supposed to open it. But BMW had a cutaway that gave us exposed what was underneath there. And one of the things that I found out was not only is it like you're not supposed to open it, you can't. You need a special tool that does not come with the car. So, you buy this $80,000 or $90,000, $100,000 car, you're not allowed to open the hood. And so, I guess, in most instances, there's no frunk up there, so you really don't need to. You're probably not going to be working on your BMW iX. It's not like, a car from the 60s or 70s or even the 80s that we used to work on and do all our own work. You can't really do that with modern cars, especially electric cars. But you can replace, say, your 12-volt battery. And we all know that with electric vehicles, that seems to be a weak point. I mean, I had two BMW i3s, both of them. The 12-volt battery failed after 2 years, and I replaced them myself. If that happens with an iX, you cannot replace it. And the funny thing is, I asked a BMW rep, well, what happens if the 12-volt battery fails? And he responded, well, just bring it in for service. And I looked at him and I was like,
right,
the 12-volt battery fails. You can't bring it in for service. You need to get it towed, And he was like, yeah, perhaps that's correct. So
maybe we've overlooked something.
I mean, I like the iX so far. I can't wait to drive it. I'm way more excited about the iX than the i4, to be honest with you. But that's something that's kind of odd. Now, you fill the washer fluid by lifting up the BMW emblem on the hood. It kind of twists and pops open, and you pour the washer fluid down where the BMW roundel is, and it's kind of neat, similar to what the Mercedes EQS does with the fillers on the side of the vehicle. But I just find it odd that that's how it's designed, that you can't open the front.
I like the BMW iX. It's like that chunky boy thing, going on. You put a picture on Twitter of it and asking people, to leave a one-word impression of what they thought of it. And I don't know, what kind of results did you get?
So it looks so far to be about 90% negative. And, I think a lot of that is skewed because of that polarizing front grille. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not going to focus on it. I'm not going to dwell on it. I don't like it. I'm on the record saying I really don't like BMW's new design language with the oversized front grills. But that said, the rest of the vehicle, you alluded to the word chunky, and I guess you could call it that, but I kind of like it. I don't dislike it, put it that way. I really like the interior. The interior is gorgeous. It's comfortable. It's beautiful. I like the textures that they use. The layout is kind of very simple and minimalistic, but at the same time, it has everything that you need. Really looking forward to driving that vehicle. And I also learned that BMW incorporated a lot of CFRP into this vehicle. I wasn't aware of that. A lot like the door jambs, that's all CFRP. And there's CFRP inside the steel frame to reinforce it, to make it so they could use less steel and make it even stronger than if it was all steel. So, the learnings from the i3 and i8, all that carbon fiber working that they did, that's now kind of transcending across BMW's product line. So, I know all of that research went into, they said the i3 cost, a couple $2 billion to engineer and everything. But, BMW is going to, that money is going to pay dividends across their product line.
Right. I just wanted to say that CFRP is like carbon fiber reinforced plastic, I believe. Exactly.
Yeah. It's not, a lot of people say, oh, the i3 is carbon fiber. It's carbon fiber, but it's carbon fiber reinforced plastic. It's not just straight carbon fiber. That's too brittle. It would crack, too easily. So BMW came up with this way of weaving it and injecting plastic into the mold, and that's what the i3 and i8 are using. That's what BMW is now using in their product line. And a lot of what I've been doing here this week, unfortunately, I'm not having fun like Kyle. Kyle's out here driving every kind of EV there is. And I'm sure you're going to talk to him later.
Yeah.
But I've been kind of locked down with BMW. They have programs for us every day, learning about manufacturing, learning about safety, all the different workshops we've been in. And I'm kind of glad that's kind of over. And now I get to finally drive the vehicles. But one of the things that I did that I found was really cool was we went to the FITS, their research and development labs, and they just finished building out this simulator lab. And they have these really, really crazy cool simulators that the vehicles go into. Yeah. And then they pay people to come and drive them. And you're inside this globe in the car. And you're also, the BMW, what they do is, there's like a runway or a jetway that takes the person to this globe, where it's kind of like, imagine on a jet, it attaches to the globe. So the person, as they're walking in, they don't see that this is like a fake room with all kind of pulleys and wheels and everything. All they see is they walk and they get inside a car like a regular BMW 7 Series or 5 Series. And then the simulation begins, and it's incredibly high tech. It really looks like you're driving, and you're on this giant spinning globe where it gives you all the pitch and yaw, and it really feels like you're driving the vehicle. And then inside, BMW engineers have all these computer screens set up, and they're analyzing everything. The person, there's a camera on their foot to watch as they hit the gas and the brake and so forth and so on, and then diagnosing every type of aspect of what the driver's looking at, what they're paying attention to. It was pretty cool, I have to admit. One of the things that I learned there was it takes 5.5 megawatt of electricity to power this thing.
Wow.
That's like a town. But what they did say was 100% of the electricity used at the facility is renewable energy.
That's cool.
BMW is really making an effort to have all their plants and facilities use 100% renewable energy. So at least, they're using a lot of electricity, but at least it is renewable electricity. And then we went over to the BMW Classic. The BMW Classic is where all BMW cars that are classic cars, and I think that is older than 1989 or something. They told me the age. I forgot exactly what it was. Most of those vehicles can't be serviced at regular BMW service centers. They just don't have the parts. And this is where they service all the special old vehicles, and they do full restorations too. I mean, there was 6 M1s there. I mean, it was crazy. And they took us into this site. Actually, is the site of the original BMW factory from way back in the early 1900s. But they just use that kind of as a museum now. And they have all these old BMWs stored there, and these big pictures on the wall that show the exact room where you're in, and you could look up. The windows are the same, the columns are the same. It's amazing. It's lasted for more than 100 years, and now it's storing all the old classic BMW cars. So as I walk out of there, I see this alleyway, and I walk down the alleyway. We kind of weren't supposed to go there. We weren't told we weren't allowed to. And there was a Mini E at the end of the alley. Oh. And I was in my element. I had just seen all these old, ridiculously priceless BMWs, one-of-a-kinds that they made, race cars. But all I wanted to see was my Mini E that I drove back in 2009 to 2012. And that was so cool to see one. I asked everyone there if I could drive it. I was knocking on doors, and they're looking at me talking in German. I'm like, the Mini E, can I drive? Oh. And it wasn't happening. But I did find one of their mechanics that did tell me it works, it drives. They do drive it around, so it wasn't just parked there. It was so cool. It brought me back. I mean, that's how I got really hooked on electric mobility back 12 years ago. That was the car. That was my gateway drug, and that got me really, it was life-changing, and it really made me go into this field of, writing, reporting, and speaking and advocating for electric mobility. So it was really cool to see one of those vehicles there. And then while we were there, we drove we didn't drive it, we drove in BMW X5 Hydrogen. So BMW hasn't given up on hydrogen. They're actually investing a lot into it now. They're going to be making and selling an X5 that's a full hydrogen, vehicle. And I have to say, I drove in it, and I mean, I've driven the Hyundai Nexo and the Toyota Mirai. And the one thing I always noted was that they're always underpowered. They never seemed like, you step on it and you expect it. It's an electric car, a hydrogen car. It just doesn't have that instant torque, that oomph. Neither of those vehicles. This thing did. This goes 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds or something like that, which is fine for an X5.
Oh yeah.
I tell you, it drove just like a BEV X5.
Right.
With the driving experience inside, you could not tell it was a hydrogen vehicle. So, I've never been against hydrogen vehicles. I've always been against the fact that I don't think we could ever build out an infrastructure. And I said, these things work. It's a little wonky how we get the hydrogen and how we make it and so forth. But I would imagine if we were to really transition to hydrogen vehicles, we would perfect and improve the methods that we do, and that would get better. But I just don't believe that we can ever have a hydrogen refueling infrastructure that would be adequate. And I told that to our driver, and he pulled up his navigation system, and he said, look here, look at what we have. And he showed me a list of like 12 hydrogen refueling stations within like 30 or 40 miles of where we were. So evidently, they're installing them in the Munich area. Right. And there's an adequate infrastructure of them. I mean, you could never buy one by where I live in New Jersey. There's not a single hydrogen refueling plant, that I know of within hundreds of miles. But it's interesting that they're going in that direction. But they made it clear to say, look, electric is the future. But is pure electric the only bullet? And we don't think it is. We think that there's going to be room for hydrogen vehicles also. That doesn't mean we're going to take any money away from pure electric BEVs. We're moving forward. We know the future is electric, but we also think that there's going to be room for hydrogen vehicles also. So we're going to be getting an H2 X5 at some point soon, and I can attest to the fact that it drives great. Now, whether or not you'll be able to refuel it anywhere, that's another question. But it really drove well.
Right on. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to contrast their approach to that compared to like Volkswagen, another German manufacturer. I think they've pretty much nixed hydrogen out of their programs, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that.
Yeah, they VW put up a PowerPoint or an infographic, I should say, out recently that was just the steps of electric vehicles. So from cell to tailpipe, or however they phrased it. And yeah, it was pretty damning on hydrogen. But that's VW have taken that stance. Before we move on, Tom, I want to ask, with that Mini, did you get any background on what number this was, where it was used, if it was a customer car or ever made its way into the customer's hands, or was this only ever a works vehicle? Could you find out anything about this?
So nobody there really would talk to me about it, but it was number either 536 or 538, I forget. And from what I remember, they made 600 of these. And the numbers above 500, most of them didn't end up in customer hands. And I could be misremembering, but I ran like the Mini E Facebook group and everything at the time, and I remember it was very rare to hear of anyone whose number was much above 500. So I almost think that they put out 500 cars and then like kept 100 of them for like spares, and if a car broke down or was totaled, they'd have another one. And I think I know BMW always used a whole bunch of them. In Munich, they were driving around all over the place back then when the program was going on. So this may have been a BMW car all along.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know.
And then my other question, I have a friend who is a Model 3 performance owner, and he has just got his order in for a BMW i4. I think the M50, if that's the one on sale, the high-spec one. You've talked a lot in the past, Tom, about how BMW, much like Toyota did with electrification, BMW were there early. Then they, through the sort of teens, had a bit of a wobble in terms of corporate strategy. They lost a lot of those people that were there early doors making the electric vehicles. You've spent a lot of time with BMW this week. Are you getting the feeling that corporate culture has changed now, and that they are? You've said that the future is electric, but that's all well and good. But what's your gut feeling saying?
So they're saying all the right things, but you asked me about my gut. I'm still not convinced. I wish I could say I was, because I'm rooting for BMW and I want BMW to do well. I mean, I was such a big part of their early electrification program, and I remember back then they were really all in then. But as you mentioned, somewhere around 2015, there was some kind of board meeting. There was some kind of decision made that said, we need to pull back. What we need to do is focus on developing all the vehicles, having this variable platform, which they then created the CLAR platform that the i4 uses, not the iX. The iX has its own dedicated electric platform, which is why I'm so excited and waiting to drive that vehicle, more so than the i4. The i4 shares like 95% of its components with the 4 Series Grand Coupe. So it's the same vehicle. It's a couple of different changes here and there. I'm in a different power plant, but I can't imagine that it's really going to feel and drive like a proper EV would with a dedicated platform. It has to be compromised.
I saw a comparison with it to the Model 3 yesterday, and I think it claimed that it's 1,000 pounds heavier than the Model 3, and it's only a little bit bigger, like a little bit longer, a little bit taller. That's a lot of weight.
I think it's 3 inches longer. I could be wrong, but I remember looking up. I think it's only 3 inches. That's not a lot. And as you said, yeah, it's a lot heavier, and it actually has a slightly bigger battery, I think, than the Model 3, just slightly bigger, like 1 or 2 kilowatt hours bigger, I think. And look at the range. It has drastically less range than a Model 3.
Well, those are not necessarily EPA range. I mean, real world ranges. We need to do that or range test to see exactly how they compare. But yeah, on paper it doesn't look great.
Exactly, and I mean the Model 3 is EPA range rated at 353. This thing's going to come in, most likely, well south of 300. Let's see EPA range rating. I think BMW was saying right around 300. If it is EPA range rated at 300, I'll admit maybe I was a little off there. But let's see. Let's see what it comes in at. I'm looking forward to driving it. But I could tell you my expectations aren't as high as they are for the iX. Maybe I'll be wrong. I mean, I'm going to get a good chance to drive both of them. Although the i4 isn't going to be as good of a drive as the iX because it's not as far along in product development. So we need to have a BMW employee driving a car in front of us, in front of me, the whole way. The iX, it's like giving me the keys and okay, meet us here. It's 100 miles away. Have at it. Do what you want. But with the i4, I'm trailing a BMW employee, so I might not have the opportunity to really juice it up like I will the iX.
Yeah, it's probably partly to do with how expensive pre-production cars are. We're not making too many of them, and partly to make sure you behaving yourself. Just a quick, I know we got to move on and talk about what you've seen at the show, but just to give the viewers and listeners some insight, everyone knows who you are from Inside EVs and the other channels and writing that you do. But who else have BMW invited along to come to some of these workshops? Is it a lot of electric guys and gals, or is it a kind of mix of journalists, or who have they brought along to impart their wisdom to?
Yeah, so it's not the electric outlets. Like Electrek wasn't invited. Clean Technica's not. Well, they're not here. I can't say for sure they weren't invited. Perhaps they passed. I wouldn't think that they would pass, but we'll see. It's the Motor Trends. Johnny Lieberman's here. I was actually talking to him today at lunch, and he was talking about his time with the Rivian R1T, and just totally floored by it. Said it was better than he ever expected, and and then just as we were talking, he was like, "Oh, in like 15 minutes, our story's going to drop," and it was right before it went, and. He was just like, the thing is just insane. It's more impressed than I thought I was going to be. So you've got Motor Trend. Forbes is here. Dan Neal's here from, New York Times, is it? Or, no, Wall Street Journal. I'm sorry, I forgot. Some of the big name outlets, are here. Not really electric vehicle specific websites. It's all the good old boys.
Well, I think it's no bad thing, because many of those journalists are probably doing 90% combustion stories / reviews, long-term tests, and 10% EV maybe. I mean, EVs are hot, and so a lot of these websites know that you put a Tesla article up, it'll get clicks, but still they're probably still really immersed in fossil world, and so I think it's no bad thing that they get some exposure from the horse's mouth, even if it's just one particular manufacturer. So that's a positive spin, maybe.
And quite honestly, Martin, I think I was invited because of my history with BMW. More than, they wanted to get an electric vehicle website here, because Jeff Perez from the Motorsport Network was invited. And typically when we do these press drives, they don't usually invite, Inside EVs and Motor One. They'll say, look, you're Motorsport Network, send us one. We'll give you one invite. So I really do believe that it was because of that, because we actually had some conversations about that, you had to be here because you're part of our electric vehicle history and all that stuff. So, and that's good on BMW for recognizing that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Hey, so BMW also had the iVision Circular there at the show. And I know we don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that really quickly because it's a concept car. It's not even a concept car, really. It's like, to me, I think I tweeted out, I see it as more of a study, of what the future could look like in certain ways. I mean, it has like the BMW character in like the i8 grille sort of, looking at, but it's like, it does have a steering wheel. That's kind of weird. Yeah,
well, like you said, it's not a concept, really. It's not, well, it is a concept, but it's not something that ever will go into production. It's a concept in the meaning that the whole thing, it's actually a true concept, because what BMW is saying, like, this is our concept of the future, where, we rethink everything, we reuse materials. The whole thing's made of recycled components. They talked about all the bits are very easily interchangeable. Like if you wear out the one of the seat covers on one of the seats, you could very easily change it. Like there's all the interior components. You like pop a button and it pops out, and then you could just put a new one in. So that it's just where their mind's going in the future as far as sustainable manufacturing. That they're really focusing on sustainability, and they want to use as many different types of recycled materials as possible, and they also want to make sure that the vehicle is easily recyclable. And that's one of the things they talked about, because it's one thing to be recyclable, it's another thing if it's so hard when it's end of life to pull everything apart, recycle it. It's easier to just crush it. They said they want to focus on making the vehicles very easy to disassemble and take the different parts to where they need to be recycled. So that's their mindset with that. I mean, it's a cool little vehicle. It would have been a great successor to the i3 if they actually were going to go forward and make something like that. But it's not
challenging.
It's not
stylistically, it's a little challenging stylistically, I think, for today's world. But I think the recycling part, I think they recycled like the seats from my grandmother's couch from the 70s. It looks nice but like cushy and warm and gold. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, the interior looked really comfy. We couldn't sit. Nobody could really sit in it because it's a one-off. But it looked really cool. But it was weird. You see, the dashboard was a giant crystal.
Oh yeah.
Like it was like, ooh, magical or something. Like there were no buttons or anything. It was just this big crystal that was, I guess, all hand gestures or whatever. So. I mean, it's concept.
Hey, did you, speaking of interiors, so a few weeks ago or a few months ago, we saw the Ora Punk Cat from China, and that had that crazy, well, it looked like a Volkswagen Beetle from the outside, and had crazy retro future things going on the inside, video game, but I don't know. Anyway, the same company's back at this show with the Ora Cat. Did you get a chance to see what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I walked around the show floor. I only had like 2 hours because, as I said, I'm here as a guest of BMW's. I have a lot of things to do with them specifically. So I had like 2 hours to walk around the floor, and I was deciding, well, what could I do? I said, let me find a couple wild electric vehicles and just report on them. I'm not going to go to the Volkswagen booth or the Mercedes booth. I'm going to find some cool finds. So I came across this new Ora Cat. Now, Ora is a sub-brand of Great Wall. And this vehicle, it looks really cool. It actually looks like a Porsche, in my opinion. Right. The front, the headlights, and everything. This really, I mean, Chinese brands have been known to copy once in a while.
That's great.
And you could really see Porsche on the front of this vehicle, which is a good thing, I guess. It's a front-wheel drive vehicle. It has a 63 kilowatt-hour battery. And they say it's good for about 400 kilometers, which is about 250 miles. That's on the WLTP rating. So EPA shouldn't be too much off of that. And one thing that they talk a lot about is it has a really advanced ADAS system. Has 5 millimeter wave sensors, 12 ultrasonic radar sensors, and 4 cameras. So this isn't just like a little cheap, inexpensive Chinese car. It's actually pretty sophisticated. The interior, like you said, is pretty retro. It's going to be available later this year in China and in the first quarter of 2022 for Europe is what I believe. And the price is 30,000 euros, which isn't crazy. That's like $35,500. And just like a really fun looking, cool car. And they have it in a sport version. And there were a couple different versions on display. And I was able to capture some video of it. I'm going to actually be putting together a full video of that and some of the other cool, interesting finds that I found, hopefully within the next week or so, and get that up on Inside EVs. But that wasn't the only really cool electric vehicle that I found. I also went over and checked out one of your favorites, the Microlino.
Yes.
So the Microlino is literally a copy of the BMW Isetta. I don't know how they could even make that and not be sued by BMW, but I don't know. Could you copyright or patent like the style of a car? I don't know, but it is an Isetta, except for the fact that when you open the front door, the Isetta, the steering wheel used to come with you.
Right.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen with this car. The steering wheel's fixed. And I actually sat in it and checked it out. And it's such a cool vehicle. It's a 2-seater. And what I love about the company is they advertise that there's room for 2 plus 3 cases of beer. That's their advertisement. So, if that's what you're leading with, I'm all in. Like, that means, you've got a sense of humor. You love it. And, I don't think we're going to see this car in the U.S., Dom, because it has 4 wheels. Which the Isetta had also, but a lot of people think the Isetta was a 3-wheel vehicle.
3-wheeler, right?
That's because the 2 rear wheels were really close together, pushed inside the vehicle. So when you looked at it from the side, you had the front wheels out here, and then you saw the back wheel all the way in, and it looked like it was a 3-wheeled vehicle, but it wasn't. It was 4 wheels. Same with this. So here in the U.S. we have different regulations. In Europe, that thing would have to be able to pass all kind of crash tests and everything. They'll never be able to sell it here, but you're going to get it in Europe. And it goes up to 56 miles an hour, which is 90 kilometers an hour. It starts at only 12,000 euro, which is like $14,000.
That's with the tax too, right? Added in the 20% VAT.
I believe
tax.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, prices over here, you very rarely quote them without. It's normally the price you pay.
That's why I expected that. I think there's laws for that, Martin, that don't allow you to quote it without. So,
Exactly.
Although I haven't researched that, it does say starting at 12,000 euro. I'm assuming that's with that baked in. It has 2 battery options, either 8 kilowatt hour or 14.4 kilowatt hour. The 8 kilowatt hour goes about 78 miles per charge, which is like 125 kilometers. The 14.4 kilowatt hour battery does 124 miles, which is like 200 kilometers. Just such a cool, fun little car. Like, I don't know if I mentioned this. Yeah, I mentioned the speed. It goes up to 56 miles an hour, 90 kilometers an hour. I don't know if I'd want to drive that fast, but tooling around town and like picking up groceries and, picking up my 3 cases of beer, would be awesome to have that little thing driving around. I swear, I think I might buy one if it was legal in the U.S. just to make ridiculous videos and stuff, and just to have one to drive around my town of Chester. I live in a really rural part of New Jersey. It would be fine, just tooling around town with that thing would be awesome. But the company also makes the Microlino, which is a little scooter. It looks like a Vespa, like a retro, really cool scooter. I don't have really any of the statistics on that, but you can go to their website and if you want to look up more statistics on the scooter. I just kind of saw that when I was leaving and did a quick video of it, but such a cool vehicle. I love companies that want to have fun. You could tell this company's all about fun. Even the people at the stand like didn't take themselves too seriously. You know, it was like look at this thing. It's a good. Who wouldn't want to drive in this? You know, so it was cool.
See you inside of it. It looks a lot bigger than the old Isetta, though, right?
Yeah, it's bigger than an Isetta, but it's still not that big. I'm not a big guy, Dom. I'm only 5'8". So, it looked like there was a lot of room for me in there, but, I'm not Kyle. Kyle's like, a head over me. And he probably would have filled up that, eggshell a lot more than me.
Interesting point about mobility, though, isn't it? In terms of the things that we'll be driving in the future, electric or not. And, you think, well, maybe I should be on a scooter. Some of these journeys that I do in a car, if I'm just going to go pick up some groceries, I think, I should be on an e-bike, an electric bike, a scooter. But in bad weather or whatever, 12,000 euros is 10,000 pounds sterling. It's 14,000 US. And that's easy to put a second or third car on your driveway just to try and cut down on some of the space that we take up on our roads by driving these ridiculously large vehicles to go do the simplest of tasks when you don't really want to be out in the elements. So I love cars like this. And, because they have a place, they have a really defined place for somebody somewhere, not for everyone, but I can't wait for it to go on sale.
Yeah. And Martin, you mentioned, in the winter when you don't want to ride your e-bike that much, they did make a point that this drives great in the winter. And they said, they even will make chains for the tires for like areas that have like really bad, and I'd imagine it's not going to go through 2 feet of snow, but, icy roads and snow covered roads with the proper tires and even chains that, that they claim that this will do just fine. So,
it's a Swiss company, right?
It's a Swiss company, right. Engineered, designed, everything in Swiss. But it is going to be made in China.
Okay.
The manufacturing is going to be done in China.
Right. But in Switzerland, they have like all kinds of, snow and things. So they're thinking about those kind of things when they're, developing it, I guess.
100%. I think initial sales are going to be in Switzerland and Germany only. I think that's where the initial sales are going to be. So, those are areas where you're going to get snow. So, it makes sense that they're preparing for that.
It works out all right in Polestar. So, it's fine where it's made.
All right.
Yeah. And I did find a couple other EVs that I'm going to hold off on. We're going to put those in the full video that I put up on Inside EVs. A couple other really cool finds of these unique little electric vehicles.
That sounds awesome, Tom. Hey, well, I'd like to thank you for joining us, and so we'll talk about those next week. I guess we'll also have a gentleman from Ford on next week that we're looking forward to. And so, but for now, let's just go fast forward into the future, back to Friday.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tom, for that update, and we certainly look forward to hearing more about the how the spec of these cars translates to the actual driving experience, the BMW iX and i4. All right, so before Kyle tells us about his crazy week filled with awesome cars, a quick word from our sponsor.
This week's Inside EVs podcast is brought to you by Electrify America, and we're so happy to be partnering with Electrify America until the end of the year. With Electrify America, you can drive your EV from coast to coast with more than 650 charging stations nationwide and new locations opening every week. Electrify America is bringing EV drivers the freedom they need. Whether you want to plan a weekend getaway, maybe you're off to see some friends or relatives, maybe it's a coast-to-coast road trip. You can ask our Kyle about how that's done using Electrify America charging stations. Well, you can rely on Electrify America's ultra-fast chargers to get you back on the road faster. So, where will you go charging on Electrify America? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear what your plans are for this weekend, and tell us where you'll go next. And you can learn more at electrifyamerica.com.
All right, and we're back with Kyle, who joins us from, I don't even know where you are, actually. Kyle, where are you?
Are we allowed to say?
Yeah, still in Munich, just on the, I guess, the west side of Munich.
Okay.
And, yeah, awesome.
So you're inside a car?
Are we allowed to say what car you're inside?
Yeah, of course. I'm in the Kia EV6 right now, and it's an awesome little car. It's actually, I may as well step outside and show you this thing,
Sure.
shouldn't I?
Yeah.
So give me
Is-
1 second. This is very on the spot, but I'm going to flip the camera around. Boop, boop,
Sure.
boop, boop, boop. Back camera. There we go. You can see that's not the EV6. That's a Taycan Cross Turismo. Very cool car, of course. This is a car we have here for a couple weeks, but we won't talk about that right now. We want to talk about this, the EV6. So
Right.
Alyssa's in the car too. She's just getting out over there, but this is an awesome little hatch. And so nothing's embargoed. I can tell you all about it. 800-volt system architecture, incredibly quick off the line. They say 5.2 seconds, 0 to 100K, but off the line, this thing launches way harder than that number would tell you to believe. Interior, this one's a GT line, so it has the Alcantara seats that are air conditioned, which is very cool, and very cool interior, displays, very good Kia stuff. And then the best part about this car, whoops, I have to turn it off really quick to show you this. Bear with me for 1 second. Power button off. Is the charging. So I haven't done the full charging test. I'm actually in the process of running the car down to 0% state of charge to log the curve. But this is the charging port, 240 kilowatt charging. And so far the curve seems to be very promising. So this is the Kia EV6 that we have today.
Wow.
When we first saw the pictures of this, some people like me maybe weren't super impressed by the design. After seeing the Ioniq 5, which is built on the same platform and has like incredible styling, this was it's not quite that level. But in person, what do you think?
Yeah, in person, really, really nice. So have to say, very impressive design wise. I think the black hides a lot of the stuff that I didn't like because it all just kind of is less busy. And altogether, design isn't my first thought when I come to look at cars or anything like this. So I have to say, it's more than adequate. The design wouldn't stop me from buying one. It would not stop me. It's pretty nice.
Right. So it's quick, and you're telling us earlier that you plugged it in at what state of charge? And
yeah, well, this is an interesting anomaly. I think what happened. So I plugged in at 73% state of charge, and it went to 238 kilowatts.
Wow.
And it held that for almost 30 seconds, and then it started to drop. And what probably happened was it dumped all the current in there, and then of course it takes a second for pack voltage to creep up, and then it hit its max packed voltage that it could have, and then it brought the charging power back down. But still, the fact that it was able to accept 238 kilowatts at 72% is just truly impressive. I think I have a screenshot at 236 at this state of charge. It just seems like the charging is going to be a monster on this thing. So I cannot wait to run it to 0 and log the curve.
Right. So handling wise, how does it feel?
Yeah, well, we'll have a full review up once I've had some time going around corners and things. So,
okay.
Initial impressions are it's not a performance-oriented vehicle. It's not like that Taycan right there, but certainly more than adequate to, throw it around a corner, power out of a corner. It's got more power on the rear axle, so it helps stabilize the car, move the back end a bit, and have to say, pretty impressed overall with the on-limit handling dynamics, if you will, on ramps, but I haven't had it on a mountain road yet.
And this is a pre-production version too, so this it may get a little better right before it gets to customers.
Yeah, so like it's stuff that won't come up on video, like some of the graining of materials isn't final. This is still a prototype vehicle. I believe they have production spec cars in the auto shows, but there's very few of those right now. So this is still an earlier, prototype. And so, yeah, there's some weird anomalies with the build quality that just won't make it to production.
Right on. Martin, did you have any other EV6 questions?
Yeah, we call them 800 volt, like 400 volt cars and 800 volt cars, and it's one of the interesting things that the VW cars, for instance, they'll sit well above 400 volts, even a reasonable state of charge. And if you run the Kia EV6 or the Hyundai Ioniq 5 down, it's going to get like 600 and something, 650.
I think it's like 670 or 660 dead.
So I don't want people watching this and thinking, well, cars either run at like your home electricity supply. It has to be 50 hertz or your appliance is going to explode, right? So everything's at 230 volts here or, different in the US. But like we call them 400, we call them 800 volts, but that's a wide...
It's like the class of car. Is it a 400 volt class or an 800 volt class? Like this full charge might be 800 volts. I don't know. We'll see.
Right? Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind, pack voltage is directly related to state of charge, and it's also directly related to the current draw on the battery pack. So when you're actually accelerating, even with a full charge battery pack, this battery might sag down to 500 volts or 480 volts under full load because it's just going to be pulled down and then come up. This is why I always recommend, if you're at very low state of charge in an electric car, not to floor it a lot, because you don't want to sag the pack and have it brick early. It's also a good way to have BMS fluctuate from actual. So when we do our charging tests and our range tests, you have to imagine we're considering all of these different factors about how to get the most out of the battery, the most ethical way to make it the most accurate, which I'm not sure of many other people doing.
And that's when people see, when you go down to a low state of charge in your car, some cars have a power limit. So Teslas do, the VWs, the ID cars do, and it will tell you, look, you're not going to be able to get full performance from this car because of the voltage is a little bit lower. So I just think it's really interesting to talk about these issues. A lot of people watch this show as well because they're learning, or they're new to EVs, or they've just bought an electric car, they want to. And so really interesting. We talk about 400 volt or 800 volt. It's not as if one is better and one is worse. There are many advantages to the 800 volt system. Look, Lucid is going to run at like 900 volt or something.
It should be maybe even over 1,000 full charge. They may need a little booster to finish off their DC charging. We'll see.
So anyway, but that's super cool that you're in this. I've still not driven one. Had a good look around one, but not had the chance to drive it yet. So I'm enormously jealous that you're doing that. And I think it's slightly lower than the Ioniq 5 and slightly maybe more performance oriented. Of course, Kia have announced the GT version, which this isn't, but that's the 3.5 second 0 to 62 miles per hour version. That's coming next year. But then again, we also think there's going to be a kind of Hyundai N version of Ioniq 5. So that would make sense. So are you in the has it got a spec? Are you in the GT line, or is it just a prototype car?
So it's long range, all-wheel drive, so 77 kilowatt hour battery, 2 motors, and then of course the GT line, so it's kind of the sporty styling. Again about 5.2 0 to 100. But I have to say they left room on the table for the performance one, no question. Right? It can be faster. The suspension can be upgraded. The braking can be upgraded. But for what this car is, for being sort of an everyday driver that has an edge of flair of performance, it's incredible. This car also has a shorter wheelbase than Ioniq 5, by I think about 10 millimeters. So they did adapt the chassis slightly. And the Kia guys were adamant that they're like, look, we were given the chassis and we created our own character with the vehicle. It's not going to be driving like an Ioniq 5 does. So I have to say I'm impressed so far. I've only had the car for maybe 5 hours, something like this. So I'm still getting used to it. I'm still driving it around. We had to film some other videos today with e-tron GT and Taycan. So I'm just trying to get used to this thing. But so far, there's not one thing on this entire car that isn't impressive. Even the heads-up display is huge. It makes lane changes with the turn signal, which I didn't even know was legal in Europe. Maybe it's not. And so maybe that won't come to production. At least this car does it. So it's cool. Yeah.
The Korean cars, well, at least I know that the Hyundai cars call it highway driving assist. In the Ioniq 5, it's HDA2, the new version of that. You do have to keep your hand on the wheel.
You have to tell it I'm touching, and then it'll do it.
I'm touching the wheel, and then you indicate, and it'll do lane change. But it's about as good as it's going to get without being Tesla. So it's really impressive.
Hey, so we have a viewer on Twitch asking, how is the infotainment?
Okay, I'll show you really quick. Hold on, let me flip around. So here's the infotainment screen. So you can see this is the driver assistance menu that I'm in right now. I can actually cycle this through. So I was blasting top speed on the Autobahn for a while. So almost 400 watt hour per kilometer, but I was doing almost 200 kilometers per hour. Lots of hard accelerations, of course, just testing this thing. By the way, didn't overheat. You can see your front and rear motor output here. It does drive rear wheel drive with the front motor physically decoupled most of the time until you give it hard acceleration in normal mode. Sport mode will keep the front and rear motors locked in all the time. Then you get to this screen over here, which is wonderful. So it's the same as mostly the Kia combustion vehicles. You have a ton of good menus here. It's actually really super snappy. You can see here your range. This one I really like because it gives you real-time energy consumption from all of your users. It's a very intuitive, very cool user interface. And then this bit right here is my favorite. So you can see it's all on climate control. But if I touch this, boom, it just somehow transitions to navigation controls.
Nice.
And now this is volume. Really smart, great use of space. Have to say, pleased with this whole car.
And you like that little switch over thing?
Yeah, of course. I think it's a great use. This is something that I would say the ID cars don't get that well, is all of the controls and buttons. And this car does it way better. Certainly, some people have to get used to like, oh, what menu I'm on. There's only 2, so it's a quick switch for your controls. But other than this, I think that's a small problem to give up for. So
what's the gear shifter on the Kias?
Yeah, so it's this unit right here. It's going to be a little bit upside down. Sorry about this, but it's just this little circle.
Okay.
And then you just rotate it.
Nice. I like that.
It works well. And I'm not sure about a drift mode or anything like this.
Okay.
I haven't even turned traction control off. Haven't even really read through the spec sheet yet. We just got it. So we'll learn, we'll see. But I believe we are one of the first to be able to experience EV6, at least from a U.S. journalist. I think I might be the first in the U.S. to drive this car. And they did say that it's possible the U.S. version will have slight suspension changes for market-specific vehicles. So we'll just have to wait and see. But there goes the Taycan. Hard accelerations there. Timon's driving.
So the EV6, actually, there's been a bunch of UK video reviews out, and we have a thread on the Inside EVs forum with all those reviews, the best ones. Like there's half a dozen or so. Yeah. So if you're interested in the EV6 and you want to see more like close-ups and get first drive impressions, that's you can see the British version of that, which is pretty good. But we'll have our own, of course, coming up soon. Yeah. So, so what else have you been up to there in Munich? I understand that you had a dinner or something with Herbert Diess, who is the CEO of Volkswagen.
Yeah, right? Not dinner. We just had a little conversation with him with a few journalists. So we had one of our colleagues from Motor One there. I was able to join a very small group, but we had, an open conversation with the CEO of Volkswagen Group, nice. Herbert Diess. Very nice, down-to-earth guy. We talked a lot about charging infrastructure, a lot about road tripping EVs, a lot of, hey, we're selling like 1,000 EVs a month or whatever it is, but we're only installing 10 chargers, like this big disparity in relationship between charger installations and electric cars. And, even today, actually, I rolled up to an Ionity station and had to wait to charge because it was full. So this is an increasing concern of mine as more EVs happen here in Europe. There's a ton more battery electric vehicles than the US, at least 3x that I see around, but also plug-in hybrids are just everywhere. But this is a really dumb thing. And thankfully they're not clogging up charging stations, but I did want to bring this up. There's a thing here in Europe where as a company car or as a private individual, you get a huge tax incentive for buying a plug-in hybrid. So it's cheaper to get the plug-in version. And then literally no one plugs them in. Literally no one. So you're just driving around with all this extra battery in your car that the government spent a ton of money for. That's probably, honestly, polluting more because it's so much more weight. And it's just a disaster. Everyone in the auto industry is like, this is a terrible situation is what's going on here, because every new car, I swear, it's got to be 80% has a plug on it. You see like plug-in Tiguan stuff that we don't even get in the US has a plug on it. And it's very silly that no one plugs them in. But and then you get like free parking and other things too, whatever.
Right. Let me explain how that works. So over here, company car tax it was 0. It's now 1% on electrified vehicles. And that's why because it could be 20%. So if the purchase price of the car is £40,000 and it has a 20%, company car rate on it, well, that's £8,000. Then you multiply that £8,000 by your personal tax rate. Now, say that's 40%. And yes, I know US viewers going, what? Yes, we get taxed 40%. Well, slightly higher earners do here as well, or 20% for most people. And so then you take, well, say that's like half of that then. Well, that's almost £4,000 you're paying a year for the benefit of having a company car in your driveway that you occasionally use to go get some groceries. In any, like one personal use journey, you have to pay that tax. EVs are free. So why wouldn't you just spec the plug-in hybrid and never, ever charge it? That's the background to what Kyle just said, and it's crazy. And we're just saved by the fact that there's not CCS connectors on plug-in hybrids, or we would be absolutely stuffed.
Right. Yeah.
But there are here, and
yeah, there are.
as we speak, there's just over here. There's a Mercedes CLA shooting brake, which we don't get in the US. DC fast charging at a location, just because the guy got lunch. So it's so funny, but what a weird situation over here in Europe.
Crazy.
But in terms of Herbert D's, he agreed, there's going to be a big focus on charging infrastructure, on mobility in general, in terms of route planning and station activation with plug-in charge. And yeah, I was up front with him. I'm like, look, I roll up to Electrify America. I roll up to Ionity. I'm starting to have to wait. I have connection issues. There's no way I would let my mom ever do this. She's going to drive a Tesla or a gas car. And he's like, yeah, well, we're gonna keep working on it. He understood the situation. And look, at least they're aware of it. Well, whether or not it's going to get better or worse, we'll see. But Tom and I can argue about that on next show when we're both on here.
Right. All right. So see, you've also got to drive, or at least check out some interesting EVs that we haven't talked about much here before. I understand that you got to see the Sono Sion up close and personal. I don't know if you want to tell us pretty briefly about that.
Yeah, my honest opinion is it's a cool idea. I did get to drive the car too, and I met the whole team, the CEOs, the everything. It's a really cool idea that, a car could be charging for you while it's parked. And I believe on Ioniq 5, you can actually spec a solar roof as well in certain markets. I'm not sure if that's coming to the US, but
trickle charge, yeah.
Yeah, this is like a 300 watt roof, I've heard, peak. This is about 500 watts peak, but they have solar panels all over the car. They have no final production versions of this. It's just a prototype. It sounds like it's just been a prototype for like the last 9 years. So they invited us to come drive the car. And I thought, great, maybe we're seeing some progress here from Sono. And went there, and the windows had fuse pulled because they didn't operate. The battery wasn't final production. The interior steering wheel didn't move. Nothing was close to anywhere near final production. Right. The solar panels were not final. The whole roof was wavy because this one sat outside in the sun. And they're like, oh, if you're going to film the roof, film the one inside because it hasn't warped. And I'm like, what is going on here? This just seems... Look, the people are so nice. There's so much passion. There's so much excitement. But I have to say, the driving experience was absolute worse than trash. And the whole idea of the car is like, it's ugly. There's no sense of fun in this because it's mobility. It's not a car. They're trying to solve a problem that is a legitimate problem where if people without home charging or apartment charging, like we're experiencing here in Europe, we have to constantly go and find chargers and sit there while the car charges. This would be able to go. But at the end of the day, I have to say I was pretty disappointed. And my honest opinion is I was very disappointed in the progress of the company, in the drivability of the cars, and the actual presentation of the vehicles not being anywhere near final production, even though they have a design freeze in 30 days from now.
What's the so what's their on-street production date?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think they still have to go and get funding. So they're taking all these reservations to go. And, I talked to one of the CEOs. I guess there's 3 partners or 2 partners. And he said, I asked him, how many reservation holders do you think are going to convert to orders? And he and I have a €5 bet on this. He says 95% of people that put their money down on this project will actually buy one. Okay. Which is just insane. I said, all right, €5, 25% buy one. And he's like, okay, so we'll see which way it goes. But I think 25% of the people will take delivery. He thinks 95. He knows more than I do. Obviously, this is his product. But after driving it, I don't know how anyone could want one. I mean, it's just so many weird issues. This one didn't even AC charge. I don't know how they charge this car. It did solar charge at 86 watts, but only the roof worked, not the side. Right. And again, design freeze, which means everything has to be completed for production, is in 30 days from now. This is a total disaster, in my opinion.
Right. They do have like on their site, I believe, a very kind of transparent set of documents about the progress of the company, what they expect to do at certain periods of time, and things like that. So, I mean, this won't be what you got to drive. Hopefully, the actual vehicle won't be like that. As far as, I mean, it'll have a general appearance of that. But
yeah, look, all the best to them for production. If they can make a production vehicle that drives well, that is going to work and is going to feel great, that's awesome.
right.
But I personally saw very little value in, going over there, sitting in traffic for 2 hours, which is fine. Like, obviously, we went there. They were so nice to host us. The people are great. I'm friends with the people. Like, genuinely friends with them. They're great.
Sure.
But their product is just a bit early to, like, invite every journalist who came for IAA to come check out their car. That's not any way really relative to what they're actually going to be making.
Right. They needed to have something fresh out there, I think, because that car's been around a while, like you say.
They said this one that I drove's done 5,500 test drives. And I'm like, cool. Well, where's the excitement in us driving this thing? Let's see some new things.
Yeah. Man, it's like starting a new company is hard, man. All right.
Yeah, all the power to them. I really hope they can get it right. I hope they can get it to production. I just have to say, based off of my experience, what I felt, what I drove, the only thing that really was a true highlight on the car was the power output was great. But this is an off-the-shelf Continental motor with off-the-shelf software that anyone can build in their backyard and put on a wooden chassis.
Right. All right. So what other cars did you drive this week or see that you want to talk about?
Oh, so many.
So,
well, we picked up the Taycan Cross Turismo from the Porsche factory.
Right.
We went to the Taycan factory. We did the Porsche Museum.
Oh, nice.
We picked this car up. 260 kilometers an hour down the Autobahn in a Cross Turismo turbo is like the best experience ever. I made
what
it
is that in freedom units?
160 miles per hour. And made it from, Stuttgart to Augsburg, which is almost outside of Munich, in like 45 minutes, just pegged through the middle of the night. Amazing car, truly incredible car. We have an e-tron GT from my friend Chris Rifa, who's a YouTuber in Norway who came down to hang out with us.
That's right.
This car does 11 kilometers slower than the Taycan. There's that little Porsche Audi thing going on there.
Right.
And so I kept just inching away from him down the straightaways. But still really fun. I got to drive this car on the Autobahn a few times now at max speed. e-tron GT, again, very impressive car. This whole chassis is incredible. e-tron GT charging curve, 270 kilowatts from 0 to 50% is truly mind-blowing. And the fact that it can manage its thermals that well, crazy, really crazy.
It's the same as the Taycan charging, or is it quicker?
Actually, no. So it's possible, but our Taycan, we plugged in at the normal state of temperature, and we're going to do some more testing because I think it's actually faster to charge the Taycan if you run it in Sport Plus mode, which maxes the cooling out, because we were definitely overheating it by charging it too quickly.
Okay.
In normal mode. I think if the car is completely off, then it goes into its DC fast charging cooling profile. But since I had the car running, it was in normal. Therefore, it didn't want to run the fans at max. It's probably my fault for setting up the test wrong. So I'm just going to redo it in Sport Plus, and we'll look at the difference between the two.
See, Martin is sharing a photo of you parked up beside a big, what is that thing?
Yeah, It's a tractor trailer with a 2.1 megawatt hour battery pack and 10 roughly 250 kilowatt DC fast chargers attached to that big battery.
So you can feed a whole squad of Taycans off of that thing.
So my understanding is Porsche has 7 of these. They're about 2.2 million euros each. Jeez. And they use them for track events. And Bjorn Nyland has a great video on this unit. Okay. And it's such a cool device. It's something I've been wanting to see my whole life. It's such a rare thing to find a company to invest this much in electric mobility, to literally bring trailers full of batteries and chargers to racetracks. You're only going to see this from Tesla and Porsche at the moment from OEM side, I believe. The rest, even Ford, I think, brings diesel generators to charge their stuff up. We'll have to ask Darren Palmer when he comes on the show next week how they do this. But Porsche does it right, and this is a serious trailer.
Right. Hey, you also did we talk about the Honda E last week?
I'm not sure if we talked about the Honda E last week, but I love the Honda E.
Yeah. So it looks great, of course.
It's expensive, but you have to, imagine this is more of an inner city status symbol that says you're into interesting, quirky cars. You got a bit of a personality. You definitely have some money around. Like, I think people buy this like they would buy a Mini Cooper SE over a Zoe, more expensive, maybe not as good on paper, but it's a more of a premium car. This just has such a personality, such a fun flair while driving this vehicle. Rear wheel drive, tons of torque off the line. Actually, if you hit it just right, it'll spin the tires from a launch. It's hilarious.
Okay,
And,
so it's not so bad. Not so bad in the city driving then. I thought it might be a little dead. The 0 to 60 time is a bit low, right?
Say that again?
The 0 to 60 time is a bit slow, right?
Yeah, but 0 to 50 kilometers an hour is like a rocket. Then it falls on its face.
Oh, sweet.
It's just geared for off-the-line acceleration, which is perfect for the city.
And Chris is saying it's a happy little car. Also, we had a you did a post or video of a 70 mile an hour test with the car, 70 mile, like a range test, and quickly, and that basically reinforces the idea that it's a city car, right?
Yeah, because that paired with the charging curve, both of which are not good. This is a car you charge at home, in your garage, on AC, and just take it out for short trips. Very similar to how I use my electric smart car, which, my electric smart car was $31,000 US. This is $40,000-ish dollars. If it came to the US, it'd probably be 39. Right. It's a lot more car than the smart car. And it's not that big of a difference here. The Smart's expensive. Not trying to justify the cost of the Honda E. I'm just trying to say it's rare, it's unique. And when you see one on the road, someone went out of their way to buy such a unique way to get from home to the office.
Right on.
Can we talk about a car that you were less effusive about? And that's the little Opel/Vauxhall Mokka-e. You got 9 minutes into your review video of saying good things about it before you finally sighed and went, well, I suppose it's, if you want a car like this, you can probably buy it. It'll get you from A to B. You literally ran out of things to say. So you weren't so overly keen on the Stellantis platform, which is 50 kilowatt hour pack, 100 kilowatt charging, 100 kilowatt motor. It's in all their cars. They're doing it on scale, but you weren't so impressed by that.
Well, look, it works. Get the car around. It's fine. It's a car. It has fine charging. It has fine acceleration. It has fine ride quality. It has massaging seats, which I thought was rare. They're cloth massaging seats. That was cool. I don't think it looks particularly good. And then especially in this green, it's like, that's weird. It's like not really a sporty car. Why paint it in this green color? I don't know. For me personally, no, the car didn't have a sense of character or personality, which I value in a car. But you have to imagine, when I review a car, I'm trying to approach it from someone buying something like this. They're not looking for an enthusiast machine like a Honda E that's compromised in so many ways, which makes it lovable. I think a lot of human qualities are, certainly humans are flawed, right? So if you have a car that's not really that flawed, which is this right here, it doesn't have very human-like qualities. It's not something I can really connect with. It's not unique or interesting. And therefore, if you just want a boring car to get around, which is what most people want, this car is great. The charging curve, not bad at all. Really not bad. I drove this car on a big trip from Munich to Graz, Austria, and back in one day. We had a great time. That video is going to be next week on Out of Spec Motoring. It's all good. It's all good. It's just not great.
Does it live up to its price tag?
Yeah, the price I thought was very reasonable. What is it priced in the UK, Martin?
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's not cheap, but it's very much like if you are trading in from a maybe going up from a Vauxhall Corsa or something like that, and you go into your dealership and say, what are my monthly payments on this? They're going to sort you out with finance. It's going to be very reasonable per month. It's that kind of car that you just go in and say, right, my finance is done with the old one. What have you got now? I think I want electric. My neighbor 3 doors down, I haven't spoken to them. A white one turned up in their driveway 2 days ago, and I can't even for the life of me think what car they had before then. I've never known. It was probably just a bland, petrol box thing. So they've obviously just gone, well, yeah, I'll have an electric car. So it's not an enthusiast's car, but all of the thing is, this platform, these parts are going into the commercial vehicles, their panel vans, their people carriers, their MPVs, and they're
very robust platform.
Like, they're doing it at scale, and it's really smart because they're able to get the prices down on a solid platform. How often do you need to charge quicker than 100 kilowatts? Really, anyway, unless you're...
No, it was fine on the road trip because the curve's good. Even at like 80%, it's doing 50 kilowatts. Like, it's not bad.
That's good. Yeah.
Nothing about this car was bad. It's just like, it's kind of like the ID4. It's just like so boring. It's good, but at least the ID4 has a sense of personality to me. It's a little bit happy. This car does not make your day better. This car just gets you around.
Talking about quirkiness, so this car will charge perfectly, whereas the Honda E that you drove stopped charging even before 100%. Now, most people would be like, "Oh, my car's broken." So it does weird things like that, but you can explain why it stopped before 100.
Yeah, well, this is not unique to Honda E. I've had Model S, like old 85 packs, do this. I've had my smart car's done this on multiple occasions. This happens on typically EVs that don't get to sit at high state of charge and then low state of charge for a long time. Most of the press cars, unfortunately, are just fully charged, plugged in all the time, sitting full. And they don't really know they never see the bottom of the packs. So when I do range tests, like the day before, I try to like let the car sit at like 10% state of charge for 3 or 4 hours, just so the BMS knows what's down there. But I didn't have a chance to do this with the Honda E. Therefore, when I was DC fast charging the car, it reached top voltage before the BMS had a chance to catch up and realize, oh my God, I'm actually at 100%. Let me shut this thing off. And so basically that's what happened. It just had to get recalibrated, figure itself out. And, this is why I always say never use indicated state of charge for instrumented testing. You have to go from when the charger, literally when the car won't move, to when the charger shuts off is the only true way of knowing your top and bottom of the battery pack.
Right. Hey, just a quick thing. I just got a notification on TikTok that your Out of Spec Studios video is published. So,
well, you haven't liked it. Make sure you double tap the screen and hit the like.
Right.
There we go.
There you go. Come on.
So, hey, if you're not following Out of Spec Studios on TikTok and you're a TikTok person, check it out. He's got tons of great videos on there. Hey, I also wanted to ask. So that's on the Stellantis platform. You also drove the Fiat 500, and is that the same kind of deal?
Different chassis, but the Fiat 500e is another interesting one that sort of feel the same way about the Mokka-e, although the 500e has a lot more personality. By the way, huge freaking battery pack in this 500e. I mean, really? 42 kilowatt hour usable in this little city electric car. It's amazing. And the charging curve is great. Kind of just sat right around 70, 80 kilowatts the whole way through. It's fast. It spins the front tires everywhere. Like, it's a very pleasant car. Okay. So I was impressed. I thought the plastics were a little cheap. I thought the build quality of the interior was actually a little bit poorer than I was expecting. This is where Mini Cooper SE, you lose the range, you lose maybe the outright acceleration, but you gain the interior quality. Right. So you can kind of switch between the two. But 500Es are everywhere here. They're so popular, and they lease out really well is what I hear. And you know what? You can't go wrong. Amazing user interface. It's got the new Uconnect system in it. Fantastic user interface. Really well put together platform with such a big battery. And honestly, it did put a smile on my face a little bit. I did kind of enjoy it. Just didn't like all the plastic feeling. And it smelled like a 20-year-old Chrysler Pacifica, but that's just this particular one because I don't know what happened to it before I got it, but it had like 14,000 kilometers on it when it got dropped off.
Okay. So any other cars that pop up? We have to get to the news real quick.
Yeah. I drove an Evum yesterday. I really want to mention them on this show. We went to like a little party there, and I drove this Evum. It's like this green pickup truck, and it is my new favorite vehicle. It's so compromised in every way, but when you think about it, this is designed to really the design theory was take a Unimog, which is like the Mercedes off-roading truck thing, electrify it, miniaturize it, make it electric. I already mentioned that, and then electrify cities and municipalities in developing markets that don't have access to petrol infrastructure, to combustion vehicles. I think we'll see a trend towards developing markets, developing countries, skipping gas and going right to electric. You can put a solar panel out in the field near a village, charge up the 1 or 2 local trucks to do little work projects, and that's what this is built for. 4-wheel drive. It can tow 1,000 kilograms. You can put 1,000 kilograms in the back of it. It does 70 kilometers per hour. It's approved for Autobahn highway use. You can buy them now. They're in production. It's not a prototype. And it's just has so much personality and flair. I made a whole video about it. It'll go live at some point in the next few weeks. We have content shot all the way to the end of October, believe it or not, by now. And we still are only halfway through our trip. So we have plenty of videos coming for everyone.
There's a bunch of things coming up too. I know Tom's going to be busy the next bunch of days. He's got things we can't even talk about yet. But yeah, the next little while is going to be pretty awesome for electric vehicle fans. All right. So should we get to the news real quick?
Was there anything super interesting?
Well, we should probably talk about, there's a bunch of Mercedes EQs debuted at IAA.
I got to see all of them.
All right. So I'll try to, I wrote out some things for some of these things. So I'll try to get through them real quick. So Mercedes were out in full force at the IAA show in Munich, debuting like a half a dozen electric concepts and production vehicles. So let's take a look at some of them real quick, starting with the concept EQG. This, they say, is a near production study of the boxy SUV, and it appears to be built on the traditional ladder frame bones of the G-Wagon. So Mercedes has been selling those for over 40 years, and it was originally developed as a military vehicle, and it's manufactured in Austria under a contract by Magna Steyr. Mercedes hasn't given many details about it yet. As you can see, it has a few different styling elements that sets it apart from the combustion version, like the illuminated side strips there, and a more EQ style fascia. Drivetrain-wise, they say it will have 4 motors, so each of these wheels will be individually controllable. It also has an off-road gear reduction thing, which can be activated via a 2-speed gearbox thing for some reason. I'm not sure. Mercedes expects it to be just as capable off-road as the combustion version. No official word on the size of the battery. There are rumors that it has the same 107.8 kilowatt hour battery as the EQS. That's the sedan. It's shaped like a box, though, so it will have significantly less range. Kyle, are you a fan of the G-Wagon, and what do you think about electrifying it?
Oh, I'm the biggest G-Wagon fan. Of course, while I was in Graz, we had to take a detour and drive past the G factory. I've actually owned a vehicle out of that factory. It was a Mini back in the day, but yeah, the G is something that, you know, I love so much for what it stands for: the military use, the off-road use, the quality, the ruggedness, not so much the status symbol that it's become, although I am happy that it has become this because it's kept the G alive for so long.
Yeah.
And Mercedes recognizes the importance of having a G as a status symbol, but also as a rugged off-roader. So to electrify this, you know, they're not going to mess around. They're going to do it right when it comes to production. They're going to make it rugged. They are going to make it off-roady. And I am so excited for this. Forget about the styling on the concept. That's just a concept. In what world does a square thing on the back hold a circular spare tire? That doesn't make sense. But
right. Overall, it looks like a charging.
I can't wait for the production one of this.
It looks like a wall charging unit or something on the back.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but
right. But it's upscale now.
Idea.
Like originally, it was originally proposed by the Shah of Iran, who was a big shareholder at the time in the 70s, as to be like a military vehicle. But it's, you know, become really a status symbol, a really upscale. And the last iteration of it, they took a lot of the wind noise out of it, and, you know, you're really up the luxury aspect of it again. So
yeah, the new G drives great. The old G drives like a tank, and people drove them and like they were miserable, and you had like no arm room, and they're like really tight. The new ones are rad, and now it's going electric. Count me in. Love it.
All right. So the Mercedes-Benz EQE may arguably be the most significant car that Mercedes debuted in Munich. It has a wheelbase 4 inches shorter than the Mercedes EQS. It's a sedan. It should be more capable, or no, sorry, more obtainable than its big sister. The battery is a bit smaller at 90.6 kilowatt hours, and it's said to get 660 kilometers or 410 miles on the WLTP, the European range setup system. So that should give it more range than the Model 3 in real world driving. some quick numbers. The EQE 350 is rear-wheel drive and sprints to 60 miles an hour in 5.6 seconds, tops at 130. It can charge from 10 to 80% in 31 minutes, maxing at a peak 110 kilowatts. So, and the interior is very similar to the EQS, like almost identical, right?
Yeah. I mean, that the big screen, the MB UX thing. But just to go back on what you said, a 91 kilowatt hour battery pack and 400 plus miles of WLTP range, which is optimistic but not wild.
Right.
That's some efficiency that the Mercedes-Benz engineers have been working on. You know, it's the holy grail, right? Doing more with less, saving weight, going further. So if that's even close, that's awesome.
Like if they hit 350 miles in real-wheel driving, I think that's going to be pretty good, right?
Yeah, with a 90.6 kilowatt hour pack, smaller than the EQS.
Yeah.
But in every possible way, this is EQS's little baby brother. And, you know, it's not going to be a cheaper car that much. But I hope we see plenty of these driving around for people that haven't got on board the EV train yet because they didn't want a Model S, you know? So perfect.
Right. The charging, I find that the charging speed is a little disappointing. I don't know, Kyle, do you have any thoughts on that?
100 kilowatts? What's going on? So I charged EQA and EQC this week, charging tests, both of which I got to spend time with. We haven't talked about it, but really good cars. Honestly, I keep hearing so many terrible things about EQC and especially EQA. Everyone's like, these things are garbage. Don't bring them to the US. But I spent time with them. They're both really nice. And like they drive well and they have good range. It's just the charging on both was pretty poor. Great curves, just not an impressive peak. We'll probably see the same here with EQE. The fact that, you know, this thing's under 200 kilowatt charging as a Mercedes product, that seems silly, doesn't it?
Right. I mean, I'd expect more than that from Mercedes, but I got
to play around with EQE. I sat in it. Feels just like EQS, just a little bit smaller. Looks pretty good. Maybe not so much. I'm not loving the styling, especially in person. EQS to me looks pretty poor in photos, pretty okay in person. This looks pretty poor in photos, and to me, pretty poor in person. But you know, look, Mercedes buyers, they're longtime Mercedes buyers. The interiors are gorgeous, no question. This thing's good. Oh, someone says EQE charges with 170 kilowatts.
That makes a little more sense. We'll go back and check our press.
I'm going to check our numbers on our article here. Make sure they're.
Well, thank you for commenting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. All right. Hey, so the EQB, which is basically an electric version of the Mercedes GLB, also debuted. It's only available as all-wheel drive. It has the same 66.5 kilowatt hour battery pack that's in the smaller EQA that you said you were driving. So range is said to be about 260 miles WLTP. Interesting. It has the same charge times as the EQE, 31 minutes from 10 to 80%. Despite the smaller battery, and it's got that same. Well, our article said it had 110 kilowatt hour power rating, so I'll double check that. Maybe that's the actual one for this because that makes more sense with the smaller battery. I don't know. It's not super impressive on paper, but Kyle, do you say that the actual experience will make it a good competitor with, say, the Audi Q4 e-tron?
Yeah, I think this thing looks great in person. I'm a big fan of the GLB. Actually, I get it's a little bit of a poser on a mini G-Wagon and like college girls will drive it, whatever. And I say the same thing about this too. You're going to, that's fine. It's a status symbol type vehicle. But now after driving EQA, I have a lot of faith in this platform. I have a lot of faith in the driving dynamics, and I think it looks pretty good.
Right on. Okay. I'm moving right along here. Sorry. The Mercedes AMG EQS 53 made its debut in Munich as well. This is, of course, the high performance version of the EQS. It's all-wheel drive, so you get 752 horsepower. It gets up to 60 miles an hour in 3.4 seconds if you get the so-called Plus package. That's great, of course, but maybe the coolest thing it has is a standard rear wheel steering up to 9 degrees. And it comes on 21-inch wheels and lots of carbon fiber inside and out. Kyle, is this AMG the EQS to get, or is this the EQS to get?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, if you're into high speed on the Autobahn, we need to look. This is for sure going to be a monster out here, no question. Look, we're in Mercedes home turf right now. We see them shredding down the roads. 10 degrees of rear steer is insane. Everything here looks good. I think it still looks pretty bad. Timon, our videographer, who you guys may know, saw it. He said he loved it, and that's like so surprising to me because Timon's very critical of car design, which I'm not so much. And he said this thing looked hot. The details were awesome, and so that's great. I got to again see this car. Haven't been able to drive it, of course, but interestingly, this is just the 53. Because normally the big Mercedes are 63, and then if it's a real top one, it's a 65. So does this mean there's room for a faster one in the future? Maybe.
I believe so. I think our article may hint at that as well. Yeah. So, okay, what else we have? We have the Mercedes Maybach concept also debuted. It's a luxury SUV, and though many may find its exterior design polarizing, the luxury shines through on the inside. It's got a yachting theme, and it looks properly swank. We don't have a lot of specifications on this aside from the possible 600 kilometers range. That's 373 miles, I guess probably WLTP, which would be pretty decent for an electric SUV. So I don't know if you can find a photo of it real quick there, Martin, but
I was looking for a photo of the front because it's basically just all front and some car behind it.
Right. If you can scroll down to the interior, I think that's really the best. I mean, yeah, I'm really not a fan.
You've got to look at it every time you walk up to it. And
it's true.
I know it's got the Maybach strakes, like the vertical. It's got the Mercedes-Benz star because it's got that Maybach front end. But still, you've still got to look at that if you buy it.
Buddy on YouTube says the Maybach is 100% for the Chinese market, and they like they did tend to like those more in your face sort of styling front ends like that.
This is going to look great cruising the streets of Shanghai, no question. Again, there will be production differences too, but look, I think a luxury vehicle is the perfect vehicle to electrify. They don't cover too many miles. Typically, you don't road trip, you just fly places, and therefore all of your daily driving sitting in your city center, going from A to B, in many cases like this, especially in China, being chauffeured. And why drive a big V8 or V12 powering your GLS Maybach when you can have an electric drivetrain? Makes all the sense in the world.
If you can find a quick shot of the interior, it does look really nice inside there. And I think Martin, I think this should find a home in the carriage house of your estate sometime in the future.
Yes, I found the interior. Oh, this is very acceptable.
Right?
That's very acceptable. Yes, that's not bad.
Yeah, that is a place that looks like it'd be great to spend some time there. Wow.
So Mercedes might just be lucky enough to have Martin configure and commission one of these for his own personal use.
Well, I think Maybach is doing more interesting things than AMG because that AMG EQS isn't really an AMG. I don't know how AMG goes in the electric era because AMG
it's going to be a rough one.
I don't know.
Because they're now going plug-in hybrids, 4 cylinders. It's losing the AMGs that everyone's loved and known. And man, it's really a disaster for performance car enthusiasts like myself.
Yeah. Right. Last time I was at the Formula One, they used the C63S estate wagon as the medical car, and it kind of does laps before the Formula One
and
car.
You just drove around 2 miles an hour and you couldn't even hear it.
And I was like, what? So yeah. I would like to think that Maybach doing interesting things with Mercedes, but maybe, Chinese market probably best for this.
So getting back down to earth, the Renault Megane E-Tech Electric also debuted, and that's so over to Renault, and that's the brand that you have now, I believe, right, Martin?
Yeah. Now talk about cars where people do walk into the dealer and say, my Renault Megane finance is up. I want a new one. I've heard about electric cars. And yes, we will happily sell you one of these because for every electric car we sell, we get to stay within our CO2 limits of our fleet that we sell. Mr. Renault will gladly sell you one of these if they can make enough of them. The new Megane E-Tech. What are the specs on this? I don't know.
It's on the CMF EV platform, same as the Nissan Ariya. So it's front wheel drive, but it looks a little smaller than the Ariya. It's got a choice of 2 electric motors. The base gets like 129 horsepower. The other one's up to 100 or 215 horsepower. So that's something. Also 2 different battery sizes, 40 kilowatt hours and 60 kilowatt hour packs. So 186 miles or 292 miles. That's WLTP. So charging 22 kilowatts. So that's the AC charging.
That's pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
I've owned 2 Renault Zoes now, and they both charge at. You can get some that charged at 43 kilowatts AC, but mine have always done 22 AC. If this does it as well, that's brilliant because it's dead handy when you come across a fast AC post, especially in Europe. There's loads of them around here.
I like the looks of it compared to the Aria on the outside. I like the looks on this actually over the Aria on the outside, but I like the Aria more on the inside. But
I think it looks more premium. It's here in Audi grey, and it looks good.
I was reading a review of it, and they said the controls are very Renault, like. So if you come from a Renault product from previous years, you'll find all the same things on the stocks that you find there now. It's got that interesting screen across and vertical.
And I was a bit worried about Renault. What are they gonna? How do they follow up an early? A bit like Nissan as well. Like the Leaf led, and then what do you do next? And they've mucked it up because the Aria keeps being delayed. And the same with the Zoe. I was really worried about their product lineup. But I think Megane going all electric makes perfect sense. None of these car makers want to go electric too quickly. They want to do it at the pace they want. They want to carry on selling as many combustion cars as they can because it makes them a ton of money. They're really good at it as well.
They've already invested all that money in that.
Right. So they need to bring electric cars to market, but not too quickly, but not so slowly as to be Toyota, Subaru, Mazda, but not too fast like VW are doing, because VW went, right, here we go. All in. With not so much bet the house, but here we go. The Renaults of the world are just kind of tiptoeing, saying all the things like, "Oh, if only we could get." They do their corporate presentations. If only we could get our kilowatt hour price down below $100 per kilowatt hour at pack level. Meanwhile, Chinese cars are coming out at with the LFP batteries at $60. Like, this tech is out there right now. They're just saying stuff for the politicians in France. Of course, the government owned, to hear it and go, "Oh yes, very good. Well, carry on, keep improving, and then maybe EVs will be good enough one day." Companies like this just want to do it at their own pace. But it's good.
So, guys, sorry to interrupt really quick. Look what I just got, a delivery of, finally in Europe, an electric shaver.
Look at that. Awesome. Hey, real quick, we have to talk about the ID Life before we go. Let's see, concepts from Volkswagen. It previews a cheap EV. The small electric ID model will enter the market in 2025 and start at 20,000 euros. That includes the 20% tax. So that's $18,000 car or something in that area. So that's proper budget, and that's going to be on the small MEB platform.
It looks so good.
Yeah, you like this? But compared to the Cupra Urban Rebel that we showed you last week, it's on the same short, it's so different. It's like completely opposite.
A concept. So, me and concepts I'm not really into, but if I'm judging the concept, I got to see this in person and kind of play around with it. And it's like, wow, it's awesome. It's just like, why is it so many years away? Make it next year.
Yeah, that is the problem though. 2025, I'm like, that should be at least a year sooner than they already have.
Yeah, it just shows. I don't know, but this should be coming out now if they planned ahead properly. This is the perfect time for this car. It needs to be launching like January, February, March of this coming year. That's when we should be seeing this car, not years. But anyway, cool car, cool concept at least.
Apparently, it's the foundation for both the ID2 crossover and the ID1 hatchback. Apparently,
yeah.
So.
But that should have a CATL LFP battery in it, nice and cheap. Don't worry about performance. Don't worry about charging speed, or a BYD Blade battery. If only they had that technology in the Western car maker. Well, it's out there in the world. They just either didn't look ahead or do like a Tesla with the Model 3, but they can't make this car yet profitably. And as Kyle said, they should have got this on the market now and still made money with it.
Right. It does come with a 62 kilowatt hour battery, which is the medium option in the VW MEB platform. It'll probably have a smaller option as well, but with the 62 kilowatt hour battery, it's like 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds, or 0 to 62, which is great.
Doesn't need to be fast.
No, it doesn't need to be, but that's still properly quick.
Oh, it's small and lightweight, and they're more than welcome to make a GTX version of it that they'll sell 500 of, and
that's on the table.
car magazines will write about them, but this car needs to be cheap as chips and just everywhere.
Right.
Cheap and cheerful and happy, and it does that from a styling perspective.
Sweet. And I really hope it comes to the US, because that's one that, I would definitely look at. That's like in my sort of budget. I can't spend a ton of money on a car. But that kind of performance and a nice boxy, practical style, that's like totally in my garage.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So we're over our time. So that brings us to the end of our show. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them on the Inside EV's forum podcast thread or on our YouTube or Twitch comment sections. If you like the show, please give us a thumbs up. And if you're watching us on YouTube, or a rating if you're listening on another platform, don't forget you can find and follow our panelists on Twitter. Follow Tom Moloughney at Tomolog with 2 M's. Martin Lee is at EV News Daily. Kyle Connor is at It's Kyle Connor. And I'm at Dominic_Y. Click subscribe and tap that bell icon for notifications. And we'll see you all again next week. Ciao.